She didn't call me. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't even try to explain. I found out I wasn't welcome back home through a single message on my phone. No greeting, no hesitation, no emotion. Just one sentence, sitting there on my screen like it had been waiting for me. Don't come back. It's better if you stay away. I stared at the message for a long time, expecting more words to appear, expecting a second line, a correction, anything. But nothing came. That was it. My name is Emily, and if you've ever spent years believing that home was the one place that couldn't turn its back on you, stay with me, because sometimes the place you're desperate to return to is the place that decides you don't belong anymore. I read the message again, then again. Each time it felt heavier, not because the words changed, but because they didn't. They stayed cold, final, like a decision that had already been made without me. I checked the time. 3 hours ago. That meant she had sent it and then gone on with her day. Dinner, maybe? Television. Laughter in a house I wasn't welcome in. I waited for another message. From my father? From my stepbrother? From anyone who might say, "This isn't what we meant." Nothing. The silence felt organized, deliberate, like I had been quietly voted out of my own family. I was sitting alone in my apartment when it happened. A small place, 1 bedroom, second-hand furniture, a string of warm lights hanging by the window because winter always made the space feel too empty. Earlier that day, I had packed a bag, folded clothes neatly, set it by the door. I was finally coming home. That bag stayed exactly where it was. I didn't cry right away. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone. I just sat there, holding it, asking myself the same question over and over. What did I do wrong? That question followed me my entire life. Helen came into my life when I was 9 years old. My father said she would be good for us, that things would finally feel stable. At first, she wasn't cruel. She was polite, careful, the kind of person who smiled in public and went cold the moment no one was watching. At dinner, she spoke to me like a guest. At holidays, she reminded me quietly that I wasn't really part of her side of the family. My father noticed, but he never stopped it. He told me to be patient, to be understanding, to not cause problems. So I learned early that love in that house came with conditions, and I was expected to meet them. When Helen's son was born, everything shifted. Suddenly, there were photos everywhere, celebrations, pride. I became background noise. If I succeeded, it was luck. If I struggled, it was my fault. If I spoke up, I was too sensitive. If I stayed quiet, I was difficult. So I adapted. I cleaned more, helped more, asked for less. I thought if I became easy enough to love, maybe one day I would be loved. By the time I was old enough to leave, I already felt like a stranger in my own house. Leaving felt like freedom. For the first time, I could breathe without feeling like I was taking up space meant for someone else. But even when I left, hope followed me. Because hope doesn't disappear just because it hurts. It waits. Every year around the holidays, it came back. This year was supposed to be different. I had told myself that no matter what happened before, coming home would fix something. That walking through that door again would finally make me feel like I belonged. That message destroyed that illusion. I replied with one word: okay. Not because I was okay, but because I was tired of asking why I wasn't enough. I placed my phone face down on the table and sat there until the room grew dark. That night, something inside me shifted. Not anger, not revenge, clarity. Because when someone tells you not to come home, they aren't just rejecting your presence, they're rewriting your place in the family. And I finally realized something I had avoided my entire life. I wasn't losing my home. I had never really had one. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. That familiar heaviness was already sitting on my chest, like it had been waiting for me to open my eyes. For a moment, I forgot about the message. For a moment, my body still believed I had somewhere to go. Then, reality caught up. I reached for my phone. No new notifications, no missed calls, nothing. It was strange how quiet rejection could be. I made coffee I didn't want and stood by the window watching people walk past my building. Everyone looked like they belonged somewhere. They had routines, destinations, families that expected them back. I wondered how many of them took that for granted. I remembered the house, the sound of the front door, the smell of dinner cooking, the way the hallway light flickered if you didn't flip the switch properly. I used to think memories like that meant something. Now, I'm not so sure. Growing up, I learned to read the house the way other kids learned to read books. The tone of footsteps, the way doors closed, the silence that meant I should stay in my room. Helen never raised her voice. She didn't have to. Disappointment was quieter, more precise. If I forgot to wash a dish, she simply washed it again, slower, louder, making sure I noticed. If I got good grades, she smiled politely and changed the subject. If her children succeeded, the entire evening became a celebration. My father saw it all. I know he did, but he was tired. Tired of conflict, tired of choosing sides. So he chose peace. And peace in that house always meant silence. I remember once asking him if I had done something wrong. He didn't answer right away. He sighed, rubbed his face, and said, "You know how she is. Just don't make things harder." That sentence followed me into adulthood. Don't make things harder. It taught me that my feelings were inconvenient, that love was something you earned by being quiet. When I left for college, no one stopped me. Helen helped me pack. She was efficient, organized, like she was finally clearing space. She hugged me before I left. It was brief, careful, like touching something fragile you don't intend to keep. Absence made me optional. Back in the present, I checked my email. A message from my father. Just one line. "I hope you understand." That was all. No explanation, no apology, no "I'm sorry." Just understanding. As if understanding meant accepting that I didn't matter enough to fight for. I felt something break then, not loudly, just a quiet snapping sound inside my chest. I had spent my entire life adjusting myself to fit into that family, and it still wasn't enough. I thought about calling him. I even dialed the number. My thumb hovered over the screen. What would I say? Please want me? Please choose me just this once? I ended the call before it rang, because deep down, I already knew the answer. You can't convince someone to protect you if they never learned how. That afternoon, I went for a long walk. No destination, just movement. The city felt different when you had nowhere to belong. Every cafe looked warm. Every house looked closed. I passed a park where a father was teaching his daughter how to ride a bike. He ran behind her, hands ready to catch her if she fell. I stopped walking. My throat tightened, because no one had ever run behind me like that. I realized then that I wasn't grieving the family I lost. I was grieving the family I never had. That night, I unpacked the bag I had prepared, folded the clothes back into drawers. Not with anger, with finality. I deleted the old group chat, muted my father's contact, not to punish him, but to protect myself, because hoping hurts more than letting go. Before going to bed, I stood in front of the mirror. I looked tired, older than I should have. But there was something else there, too. Strength. For the first time, I wasn't waiting to be invited back. I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I was choosing myself, and that decision would change everything, even if I didn't know it yet. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. No dramatic fallout, no angry messages, no sudden apologies. Life simply continued without me. That realization hurt more than any argument ever could. I went back to work like nothing had happened, answered emails, sat through meetings, nodded at jokes I didn't find funny. On the outside, I looked fine. On the inside, everything felt hollow. People think rejection is loud, that it comes with shouting or slammed doors, but the kind that changes you forever is subtle. It shows up as absence, as empty spaces where love was supposed to be. At night, I lay awake replaying moments from my childhood, seeing them differently now. Things I had excused, moments I had minimized. The way Helen corrected me in front of guests, the way her children were praised for things I was punished for, the way my father always asked me to apologize first, even when I hadn't done anything wrong. I used to think I was remembering it wrong, that maybe I was exaggerating. Now I understood something painful. I wasn't imagining it, I was surviving it. There was one memory I couldn't shake. I was 13. Helen's family was visiting for the weekend. The house was full of noise and laughter. I had spent the morning helping clean, hoping it would make things easier. At dinner, her sister asked how school was going. Before I could answer, Helen smiled and said, "She struggles a bit. Not everyone can keep up." The table went quiet. I felt my face burn. My father said nothing. Later that night, I cried in my room, convinced I had embarrassed the family just by existing. That was the night I learned shame could be inherited. Back in the present, my phone buzzed. A message from my stepbrother. We hadn't spoken in years. "Hey, Mom's upset. You should probably apologize." I stared at the screen. Apologize? For what? For growing up? For leaving? For finally noticing how I was treated? I didn't reply. Instead, I put the phone down and took a deep breath. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I felt tired. There's a difference. A few days later, I met my friend Claire for coffee. She had known me since college. She had seen me slowly shrink myself over the years. She listened quietly as I told her everything. When I finished, she didn't rush to fix it. She didn't say, "Family is family," or "They mean well." She just looked at me and said, "That sounds like emotional neglect." The words hit me harder than I expected. Neglect. I had always associated it with absence, not with being there but not being chosen, not with being visible but unprotected. Claire reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to keep going back just because they share your blood." I nodded, even though a part of me still wanted permission to leave. That night, I did something I had never done before. I wrote everything down. Every moment I remembered. Every time I had felt small. Every time I had blamed myself. The list was longer than I thought it would be. Seeing it all in one place changed something. It wasn't just one misunderstanding. It was a pattern, and patterns don't fix themselves. A week passed, then another. Still no call, still no explanation.
And slowly, something unexpected happened. The ache softened. Not because it stopped hurting, but because I stopped fighting it. I started filling my time differently. I signed up for a class I had always wanted to take but never felt worthy of. I stayed late at work on projects I actually cared about. I cooked meals just for myself, without worrying if they would please anyone else. Each small choice felt rebellious, like I was reclaiming space I had never been allowed to occupy. One evening, I ran into my father's name in my contacts. I paused. My finger hovered, just like before, but this time the question was different. Not, what if he needs me, but what do I need? I locked my phone and set it aside, because healing doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like distance, and distance was finally giving me clarity. I wasn't heartless. I wasn't ungrateful. I was someone who had spent too long hoping for crumbs from a table where I was never truly welcome. As I stood by my window that night, watching the city lights flicker on one by one, I felt something unfamiliar. Peace. Fragile. Uncertain. But real. For the first time, my future didn't revolve around being accepted back into a place that had already let me go. It revolved around building something new, something that didn't require me to disappear to survive. The morning of January 2nd arrived colder than usual. Snow had fallen overnight, covering the streets in silence. I packed my coat, boots, and dog tags into my bag. Everything I needed to face them, everything I had been preparing for, fit neatly in my arms. I called the property manager, a former sergeant named Mike I'd met on base years ago. "Morning, Ratch," he said. "Everything ready on your end?" "Yes," I replied. "Let's do this calmly, by the book, no dramatics." We drove through the quiet streets, the air biting at my cheeks. My hands were steady on the wheel, though my heart thumped with a mix of fear and anticipation. After all, I had survived war zones, ambushes, and nights where survival was a question of seconds. Facing them now was different. Emotions were involved, history, old wounds that never truly healed. When we pulled up to 12 Windmere Lane, I froze for a brief moment. The house looked the same from the outside, but I knew it was mine, legally, morally, emotionally. I stepped out of the car with the property manager and the locksmith. A clipboard of documentation rested in my arms. We walked to the door. Dad opened it, red-faced, shaking. "Helen, what the hell is this circus?" he barked. I didn't respond. I stepped inside. The house smelled of old wood and dust, familiar yet foreign. Mom appeared at the bottom of the stairs, clutching her rosary like it was armor. Tyler sat on the couch, pale and silent. "This is a legal transition of ownership and management," I began, my voice calm but firm. "As of this morning, all rights associated with this house fall under my direct control. You have 30 days to make a decision, formalize your tenancy under my contract, or relocate." Dad's face twisted in disbelief. "Relocate? You can't do this. This is our home." "No," I said steadily. "This is my investment. 5 years ago, you needed me to co-sign a mortgage. You defaulted. I am now the majority owner. Your choices brought you here." The house, once a prison of my childhood, now felt like an arena, but I wasn't there to fight. I was there to assert boundaries, to claim peace. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "But where will we go?" she whispered. "I don't know," I replied. "Maybe not home for Christmas, maybe not ever, but this is the consequence of choice." Tyler tried to speak, perhaps to apologize or plead, but I raised a hand. Not words, boundaries. 10 years too late. The locksmith changed the code on the front door. Every click and turn of the lock echoed a lifetime of lessons learned. I walked through the living room, past the mantel where my boot camp photo once stood. Gone now, a hollow space remained, much like the relationships that had shaped me. We inspected the illegal tenants occupying 2 of the bedrooms. College students, sublets, paying cash. The realization hit me. They had turned my property into a side hustle behind my back, all while telling me I wasn't welcome. Insult and betrayal wrapped into one. That night, back in my cabin, I drafted the second letter. Clear, formal, effective. Effective January 2nd, you are hereby given formal 30-day notice of management transition and possible termination of residency. All sublease agreements are illegal. Rent collection is suspended. Property is under formal investigation for code violations. Contact through legal counsel only. I signed it, Helen Monroe, Sergeant First Class, U.S. Army, retired, legal co-owner, 12 Winmere Lane. Then I sent it to their lawyer. Tyler received a text, check your mailbox. Within an hour, calls began flooding in, voicemails, panic, pleading, even from Dad. I ignored every single one, because I had survived them, and now they were living under my rules. Not revenge, not cruelty, but control. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need their permission to be home. The property manager updated me. The walkthrough went as smoothly as possible. They're not happy, but it's civil. Structurally, leaks, unfinished rooms, some tenants, but nothing catastrophic. You've got full control now. I let it sink in. Finally, I had power, clarity, peace. Christmas morning came. I lit a candle on my cabin porch. Not for them, not for their approval, for me. For the girl who once stood outside that house in the snow, unwanted, and finally found her way back.